We are getting to Luigi Mangione, someone who we haven't talked about for a while. Luigi Mangione is confirmed to, and he's prepared to plead guilty. No deal with the government. We're going to talk about this case. It's been a while since we've talked about this case. For those of you who don't know, Luigi Mangione allegedly killed the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. He was caught. He got away, and then he was caught by a McDonald's employee in a nearby state in Pennsylvania, and the authorities pounced on him. You know, allegedly all of this happened, right? Now, he's not pleading guilty to the murder. He's pleading guilty to the stalking charges. We're going to be talking about the importance of that. But yeah, let's get started here.
Right outside the courthouse in New York City, where Luigi Mangione confirms he is prepared to plead guilty. Tell us more, Shimon.
Okay, so I'm going to just bring it to you right now from inside the courtroom. Mangione has begun speaking, and here we go. After years of enduring pain from a broken back and witnessing similar experiences of others, he said he learned United Healthcare would be holding its annual investor conference in December 2024. He said the public location wasn't posted, but he researched to learn the location and who would be there. This is him now in court speaking to the judge in this allocution. This is the part for the judge to decide whether or not she is going to accept this plea. And he's now describing in his own words how he was stalking United CEO Healthcare Brian Thompson, saying that he learned of where he was going to be and that after years of enduring pain from a broken back and witnessing similar experiences of others, he researched where Brian Thompson would be at an investor conference in Manhattan in 2024. Brian Thompson's family seated, Pamela, in the front row. They are crying, is what our reporter, Kara Scannell, is telling us. What a moment for that family to come face to face. It breaks my heart because they have been so silent and they have not said anything throughout this whole ordeal. And to see their loved one to be murdered in this way, and now the man responsible for it standing up in court for them will be excuses. And none of this is going to make sense. To hear him explain why he did what he did, and we have heard this from Luigi Mangione before during the investigation of this, where he was having issues with his back. But for this family to sit there and listen to this, and he's now, here we go, Pam, again, he says to the judge, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died.
Wow.
He concluded by saying,
Wait, oh, he did? Luigi Mangione pleaded guilty today. One of the things he said, I emailed United Healthcare's leadership posing as an investor managing $58 billion. Unlike my other experiences with the company, I was contacted back within 1 hour.
I knew what I was doing was illegal. Again, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died. I knew what I was doing was illegal. That family is...
Shouldn't the media refrain from projecting guilt, buddy? Are you kidding me? Part of the reason why, here's the thing. Part of the reason why the media immediately took on this issue is because it's a high-profile assassination, right? It's a high-profile assassination of a CEO. And yes, corporate-backed media obviously lost their damn minds when they saw that the broader American public, who are normally very, very anti-crime, like most people are anti-crime, but like Americans are very aggressive about crimes, especially death, especially a murder, right? When they see a murder take place in broad daylight, Americans usually are like, oh yeah, kill the guy, right? Kill the guy back. That's the normal draconian attitude that most Americans have. This time it was different. Before they even knew who the victim was, Americans knew what that person's job was, right? And immediately took a very different stance than you would normally expect. And it wasn't just young people either. There were plenty of older people as well who had experiences having their insurance claims denied in some of their weakest moments, in some of their worst moments in their lives. Okay? So they associated that. They associated the victim with the pain that they had felt. Okay? They associated the person who was killed in broad daylight with the social murder of the system. They associated that with their own pain of their loved ones in their last days, in their final moments, wasting away, calling up insurance companies to try to get them to pay for this medical process, right? They associated it with the medical bankruptcies that they've experienced. So from their perspective, this was a very different story. They normally, Americans, when they see a murder in broad daylight, they think of themselves as the victim. But this time, they thought of themselves as being victimized by the person who was the victim. Now, again, analysis is not endorsement. Before people freak out over this, I'm not endorsing what allegedly Luigi Mangione did. I'm simply telling you what the reaction was. Okay? You have to remember that. Brian Thompson was the CEO when the company boasted record profits the same year they abruptly canceled my gender-affirming surgery. So in this case, Brian Thompson personally wronged me. Yeah, everyone has a story like that. Everyone has a story like that, right? And remember, United Healthcare actually had windfall record high profits that year because they had also started deploying artificial intelligence to do these claim denials. And because AI was not very good and therefore very good for the purpose of claim denial because it wasn't accurate, they were capable of denying far more than other competitive healthcare providers like private for-profit insurance companies. There's a real story of pain behind every insurance claim being denied. There's a real family behind it. There's real struggle behind it. It's a systemic form of violence. So obviously, especially in corporate media, people don't recognize it as such. But it was such a strange phenomena that even someone like Elizabeth Warren went on television and was like, look, this is a heinous crime. But the reality of the matter is, like, a lot of people are suffering. A lot more people are suffering all around the country because of the healthcare system that we have.
Sitting in that courtroom listening to this.
What? Professor Arati, Jason Arday found dead? I don't know who this person is. What? Jason Arday found dead after resigning from Cambridge over plagiarism claims? I don't know what this is. I don't know who this guy is. You haven't heard the stories about him? No. He got hounded by British media. You need to brush up. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. I'll look at what's going on here in a minute, but this is, let's continue talking about Luigi Mangione.
Wow.
Again, he admits now, in his own words, to stalking Brian Thompson. He says that in November of 2024, that he traveled, Luigi Mangione telling the judge, I traveled from outside of New York State to Manhattan. So he came from outside of New York. I emailed United Healthcare leadership. Wow. So this don't think I've heard this. I don't remember ever hearing this. I then emailed United Healthcare leadership, Luigi Mangione saying that he emailed United Healthcare leadership posing as an investor at a firm managing over $15 billion in assets and requested information about the conference.
Wow.
Unlike my previous interactions with insurers, he received an immediate response within an hour. And that is how he learned where Brian Thompson would be on the morning he would execute him.
I wanted to see this case in front of a jury because I really, really wanted to see how a jury would react to this. A lot of people were like, this is open and shut, right? But there was so much misconduct from the prosecutor's side. There was so much high-profile misconduct from attorneys general. Like, this was a defense attorney's dream high-profile case, by the way. Just judging by the way that they reacted, judging by the way that they operated, where it was, guilty until proven innocent, basically, from the start. Yeah, Eric Adams made him do the perp walk, not prep walk. It was going to be a real interesting case. I think they're going to fight the state case, get jury nullification. This is what you mean by social murder in action, affecting not just the patient.
This is what the other side of the line looks like. This is my sister Michelle. She can't walk because you guys messed up 24 years ago. We don't mind waking up at 6 a.m. to take care of her before ourselves. We don't even mind carrying her down 5 flights of stairs when the elevator breaks. But the one thing we can't stand are the pieces of paper you keep sending us. The ones with no context. Prices pulled from your inflated charge master, billing errors, charges for things that we never received. Most importantly, it's the time you've stolen from us. Most people don't realize it, but
nothing I can do.
That one sentence makes you billions of dollars a year. Your job gets easier every time we don't apply for financial assistance. And your margins, they go up every time we believe a bill isn't negotiable. So if you won't tell Americans, I will. So until you pick up, we'll keep saying, dear hospitals.
Wealthiest nation on earth, man. Only OECD country where there is a concept such as medical bankruptcy. Think about that. Wealthiest country on the planet, wealthiest country to have ever existed in history. And this is how we treat one another. This is a byproduct of the system, and systemic harm is oftentimes invisible, but it's not invisible when you're living through it. For the individual, it is very visible. It's a constant reminder. It's a very important part of this family's lives, right? I can't believe it. I can't understand it. I don't understand how others don't understand it, because this is such a universal point of pain that even rich people struggle with it. Even rich people have issues with it. It was remarkable seeing CEOs and small business owners on LinkedIn writing underneath Brian Thompson's post like, you fucking piece of shit. It was crazy. It's crazy. I get it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And, it's good for the GDP and stuff, right? It's a very powerful industry that spends a good deal of money lobbying Congress, right? 100,000 lives a year. New study that came out from Yale found that Medicare for All would save 114,000 lives a year and reduce healthcare spending by over $1 trillion. Families would no longer have to choose between paying household bills or seeing a doctor. Medicare for All is the right answer, but to our broken healthcare system. It's incredible. And so once again, corporate media that oftentimes is getting funds from Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and numerous other companies, right? Numerous other profiteers of our pain can turn around and focus on how people reacted to Luigi Mangione, how people reacted to this innocent man, Brian Thompson, getting slain. But the struggle continues. The pain continues. The pain is very real, and it is very universal. Dude, yeah, this is a great point. Joe Biden. When Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, or not Hunter Biden, Beau Biden, I apologize, had cancer due to the burn pits when he was serving in Iraq, Afghanistan, okay? He had cancer. And Joe Biden couldn't pay the medical bills. So we had to take a loan from Barack Obama at the time. When Biden was vice president, Obama was the president. People talked about this like it was, a point of pride. Like, oh, look at how wonderful it is. Look how awesome it is that, the vice president is just like us. It's like, what are you talking about? This is insanity. This is utter madness. Joe Biden says Obama offered financial help during his son's illness. That's what I mean when I say this impacts everyone, even in the highest office. I went on my insurance provider's website to book a new PCP visit months in advance. I show up to the appointment. The front desk tells me that due to a negotiations fallout with the insurance, they're no longer considered in-network, and instead of a $20 copay, I'd be on the hook for $300. I was already there. What was I going to do? Leave and wait months just for the same thing to maybe happen somewhere else? I ate it because I could. Imagine how often that happens to people who can't. Exactly. This can't go on. This cannot continue. It is one of the most insane processes that we abide by. And of course, once again, as is the case, because they can't tackle the message, they'll shoot the messenger. If you say this is unacceptable, if you say something like the reason why people find Luigi Mangione to be an innocent person or whatever, it stems from the fact that they've actually seen. It stems from the fact that they've actually experienced the negative consequences that are deeply personal, the violence of this system of for-profit healthcare. They'll say, oh, you're in support of Luigi Mangione. You're in support of murder. You're in support of death and destruction. I am a socialist. I'm a Marxist. I am not an anarchist. I am not in favor of adventurism. Okay? Adventurism oftentimes has a very negative reaction. I'm not a believer in the propaganda of the deed. Okay? I oppose adventurism. I am in favor of diligent organizing, militant organizing, changing the structural forms of violence by consistently pushing against them. That's what I believe. That's my theory of change, right? You are not a Marxist. Okay, thank you, Ashashin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know. You're the real Marxist. Okay?
So this really even highlights more. Yeah, I have not heard that either, Pam. This is new information, and obviously this all came up during the NYPD and the FBI's investigation when they were probably going through his computer and his phone and his email. But this is just so striking that he emailed, this is how long he had been planning this. And this tells you his frame of mind, that he emailed United Healthcare leadership saying, posing as a $15 billion manager of an investment fund to learn where he was.
I just want to go to Ariva on some of this information coming out of the courtroom today from Luigi Mangione. For the first time, I'm learning, and Jamon said he hadn't heard it as well, that Luigi Mangione posed as an investor with a firm and just reached out via email to the insurance company and then received a response within an hour. And that is what helped lead him to Brian Thompson, where he said, I shot him and he died. I knew what I did was illegal. Wow, Ariva.
Yeah, that's a shocking detail, Pam. I remember early on when this case came to light, when all of the publicity, we had all the reports, and I just remember the people who were supporting Mangione, who were glorifying what he did, who were making him out to be some kind of martyr. And it was really sickening at that time. And now to hear the deception involved, how he found out about that meeting, which was otherwise not a public meeting, that individuals who had not been invited wouldn't have even had access to that CEO. And he used, he posed as this manager of this large fund to get that information and then to stalk Brian Thompson, to show up at that meeting, to shoot him in broad daylight on a street in Manhattan, just makes the nature of this crime even more heinous. And I just hope all those people who somehow thought that this was an act of courage now understand what a heinous act of cowardness this was. Again, my heart goes out to the family that had to hear this, but hopefully this begins some kind of...
I feel like it's worth examination as to why there are definitely broad swaths of the public who aren't like bloodthirsty murderers or would never endorse murder, and why their attitude is very different than the way that we're hearing from corporate media. Like, is it not worth an examination at all? Is it not worth an examination at all? Because they would do this for anything else. You know what I mean? The media loves when there's like a fascinating, fascinating aspect of like a serial killer. They'll cover endlessly, the Charles Manson supporters and like try to figure out why people love Charles Manson, because that's not dangerous. That's not dangerous to the pre-existing hierarchies. Okay? Because that's a one-off, right? That's a one-off. This, on the other hand, points to a broad systemic crisis. So, of course, there's no conversation about why so many people don't actually feel this way, right? They'll do it for Ted Kaczynski. They'll do it for Charles Manson followers. I'm not making a comparison between like what Luigi Mangione allegedly did versus Charles Manson. I'm just simply saying, like, there's a reason for why the media that normally is very invested in understanding the fascinating psychology behind why certain serial killers develop a cult of personality, but they would never in a million years explore why so many millions of Americans actually see this very differently than the way they're presenting it.
Closure for them. That sentencing hearing that will take place in December will give them an opportunity to present impact statements and to talk about how horrific the loss of Mr. Thompson has been for this family. Again, we talk about the state court. At this point, Pamela, you can only imagine that this is about where he's going to serve time, because it is clear that he is going to get a life sentence, whether it's from this federal court or if he is convicted in state court. And the lawyers are jockeying now to determine, does that life sentence happen in a federal prison or in a state prison? But certain that he is going to spend the rest of his life in prison, as he should, for the admission that he just made in that courtroom today.
All right, Michael Smerconish is actually standing by and wants to get in this conversation. Michael, what are your thoughts?
I want to follow up something Ariva said about the perverse nature, the way in which some have received this horrific murder. On 54th Street, where this transpired, the hotel where Brian Thompson spent his last night is a hotel where I would often stay when working for SiriusXM and CNN. And I remember being on that block in the immediate aftermath, 2 or 3 days later. What was surreal is the fact that there were no candles. There were no flowers. There was no memorial for Brian Thompson. And what I remember is that on a telephone pole that was adjacent to the murder scene, I saw something that depicted Luigi Mangione as a saint. You might remember that there were wanted posters that were then put up in that neighborhood for other corporate leaders. And all of the glamour and panache that has surrounded this man, I just find twisted and tragic. And I can only hope that the way in which now he has just articulated exactly what he did is going to change minds, maybe not, but of those people that have glamorized this killer. I can say killer now without any fear of.
So here's the other side of the story. It's like, you can keep slamming murder is bad over and over again, but you're not making a broader point that people disagree with. Like, of course, wow, a brave take. You know what I mean? Brave take, guys. Murder is bad. I had no idea. Like, yeah, no shit. No shit. I don't know. I just don't understand why no one, and I mean no one, wants to explore something beyond simply saying over and over again that murder is bad, immoral, evil, wrong. Everybody fucking understands that, dude. That's kind of the point.
Of contradiction because of what he has said. And one other observation I'd make is what a sin that we all couldn't watch.
Here, I'll give you one other fucking comparison here, okay? Every single time, if it's systemic violence or if it's state violence, the media takes a very different tone, a very different attitude, right? ICE murders Renee Good. ICE murders Alex Peretti. And all of a sudden, it's, well, you know, the government called them terrorists. That's wrong probably, but, you know, maybe they had a good reason for it. Okay? This is not a justification of Luigi Mangione's actions. I want to repeat that one more time. But from the perspective of the average American that has had to deal with this shit, okay, they see it as murder as well. When someone cannot pay for their health care, when someone cannot pay for their health care and they watch their loved ones die as a consequence, they don't look at that and go, oh, well, sucks to suck. That's just a byproduct of the capitalist system. Sucks to suck. That's totally valid. Sorry, my grandmother should have grinded harder. They don't think like that. Okay? They think that's a death that did not have to happen. That's murder. And because this has happened so many fucking times, according to the new Yale study, 114,000 times a year, that's 114,000 families that have suffered from murder. They don't analyze it as well, this is a byproduct of the system. I should have worked harder. My grandparents should have worked harder. They should have just not gotten cancer. You know what I mean? They see it as these people should not have died. My loved ones in their final moments should have had peace. And instead, all they knew was even more pain.
There ought to be cameras in courtrooms all across the United States, including federal courtrooms and including the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah, I am with you on that, Michael Smerconish. Our Kara Scannell just came outside of that courtroom. Kara, you were there for every second of what went down. Tell us about it.
Well, Pamela, Luigi Mangione was led into the courtroom. He's wearing a beige prison outfit, escorted by 2 U.S. Marshals, where he sat down between his attorneys. The judge went through the process asking him if he understood his rights, if he had taken any medication, if he was under any medical care. All of his answers were crisp and clear, someone who was definitely in control and aware of what was going on today. And then when she started to ask him the specifics of his guilty plea, to explain what he had done that was wrong, Mangione chose to stay seated, and he started to read from a piece of paper. The judge actually stopped him and asked him to slow down because he was going too quickly through it. But a few things that stood out to me from what he said is he started it by saying, after years of enduring severe pain for a broken back, navigating obstacles in the healthcare system. So underscoring again what his motive here in this case is. And he walked through it saying another thing, he's underscoring what he had previously written about in those writings, the greed of the healthcare industry. He said he had emailed United Healthcare's leadership trying to find out about the specific location of the investor conference where he was targeting Brian Thompson. He said he claimed to have $50 billion in assets. And he said, like, unlike his other previous interactions with the healthcare industry, he got a response immediately within an hour. Then he went on to explain that he had made a gun using a 3D printer, that he had obtained a silencer, and then he said he traveled to New York with the intent to shoot Brian Thompson. He said, I knew what I was doing was illegal. He did not say it was wrong.
Defense attorneys are now at the microphones. Let's listen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Friedman Agnifilo, and I represent Luigi Mangione. Today is a solemn and significant day. With today's guilty plea, Mr. Mangione has accepted full responsibility for the death of Brian Thompson, arising from the events of December 4th, 2024, outside of the United Healthcare Investor Conference here in Midtown Manhattan. It was a single...
To me, all this feels like a plan. I mean, it is. It is 100%. Like, the way that people are going to utilize this is they're going to weaponize anyone that says, like, oh, it was awesome or whatever. And they're going to use that to slam it against, like, advocates of Medicare for all. 100%. I'm just letting you guys know. So if you're not disciplined in this moment, if you think you can make jokes or anything like that, sorry, you can't. The knives are out. And abso-fucking-lutely 1 million times over, they are going to utilize this opportunity. They are going to utilize this opportunity in mainstream media and corporate media to get everyone to shut the fuck up. Okay? It's a classic case. It's a classic case. You are not allowed to say anything about this beyond murder is bad and wrong. Everybody understands that reality, by the way, but, you know, it doesn't even matter. They will present you as pro-murder, pro-death, pro-destruction. You want to kill all the capitalists, blah, 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 whatever the fuck they can get, okay? So you just have to, you have to be very careful with how you communicate around this issue. They are probably already, there's probably clippers in here already that are actively looking to see what they can clip out of context. And then tie back to be like, oh, Hasan Piker endorses this action. Hasan Piker loves this action. What do all the people who have campaigned with Hasan Piker have to say about that, you know?
Single tragic event, yet he's being prosecuted twice for the same conduct. As Luigi explained in court today, he endured years of severe, debilitating pain following a broken back while struggling to navigate our healthcare and health insurance systems. Like the thousands of people who've reached out since this tragedy to share their own experiences, he believed that the system had failed him and destroyed his life. Despite this being a single isolated event, Mr. Mangione has been unfairly treated since the outset in every way and has successfully fought off terrorism charges and the death penalty, while also fighting at the same time 2 simultaneous prosecutions in 2 jurisdictions who are trying to punish him twice for the exact conduct. He's been treated differently from every other defendant charged with this offense in New York. However, thankfully, New York law does not allow this. New York law does not permit a person to be prosecuted and punished twice for the exact same crime under a statute that governs successive prosecutions It's also known as the double jeopardy law. Today's guilty plea triggers this statute, and we just filed our motion in state court explaining why the state charges must be dismissed under New York's double jeopardy protections. We will not be taking any other questions. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, let me go back to Kara and Shimon. I do want to talk about some of the details of what Luigi Mangione admitted in court, but just to explain what we just heard from his attorneys, Kara, and you have been talking about this, one of the reasons why they decided to go ahead and have this plea deal is so that the charges in New York State could be dropped because of what's known as the double jeopardy law in New York State.
That's right, Dana. That was one of the objectives today by Luigi Mangione's team. He was being charged both federally and in state court, and the state trial was set to begin on September 8th. But under New York's double jeopardy law, someone can't be prosecuted for the same crime twice. So that is why we saw this quick, fast-moving plea deal being reached just a few days after the final pretrial conference earlier this week, leading to Mangione pleading guilty. Now, as you heard his lawyer say, they filed a motion to get the state charges dismissed. The state prosecution has not responded to that yet, although throughout this entire case, they have been saying that they think they did the legwork on this, they did the investigation, they caught Mangione, and they wanted to bring this case to justice. So we will wait and see what their reaction is going to be in court. We can expect them to probably try to fight this. It will be up to the judge overseeing the state case to make that decision, and then sides could appeal. But it does look like the state trial set for September 8th will likely be delayed as this is all figured out. But these are still a lot of moving targets, Dana.
Okay, so
Jessica Tisch at the scene of the crime. That is the police commissioner, Police Commish Tisch. Jay Mershon says the strategy here from Luigi's team is to get the state case thrown out because New York State has very strong protections against the dual sovereign double jeopardy doctrine. They even filed a motion to dismiss in the state court today. You can read that here. Zoran's fave? Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Jamie McDonald, United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. At 6:45 on a December morning, Luigi Mangione stalked and murdered Brian Thompson in cold blood on a public sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan. Just a few moments ago, Mangione pled guilty to his heinous act. This was not a spontaneous act of violence. It was deliberate, calculated, and premeditated. In the days leading up to the murder, the defendant very carefully prepared for the attack. He tracked Mr. Thompson's whereabouts, conducted surveillance along the route he knew Mr. Thompson would take, and positioned himself to carry out the plan. Then, on a sidewalk on West 54th Street, the defendant murdered Mr. Thompson, shooting him from behind with a 9mm handgun equipped with a silencer. He shot Thompson twice at close range. The second shot came as Mr. Thompson turned and faced the defendant. The defendant did this as everyday New Yorkers walked nearby, and while the rest of the city woke up to start their day. Mangione then ran away, leaving Mr. Thompson to die. The defendant committed this murder in an attempt to draw public attention to his dislike of certain businesses. But we live in a civilized society governed by the rule of law. We debate, we disagree, we protest. We do not commit murder. No grievance, political belief, or ideological cause can ever justify murder. There can be no celebrity in assassination. Any person who celebrates, encourages, or excuses actions like these is fundamentally wrong. Mangione attempted to send a public message through violence. But the message that emerges today is very different. Violence is not a legitimate instrument to promote any political or social message. And those who resort to violence in an effort to advance their beliefs will be prosecuted, convicted, and put in jail. Today, the Southern District of New York, together with our law enforcement partners, writes the final chapter of Mangione's federal prosecution. Now, he stands convicted in federal court and faces life in prison. One other point that's important to note. While the defendant pled guilty, our office does not have a plea agreement with him. Instead, he pled open, which means he pled guilty to all pending counts in the indictment. There are no accommodations or concessions, and we are free to seek the maximum penalty under the law. I'd like to thank the dedicated prosecutors of our office's Violent Organizations and Crime Unit, who are beside me, for their remarkable efforts to bring this case. I would also like to thank the NYPD and the FBI, whose tireless and incredibly sophisticated investigative efforts made this conviction possible. Finally, I want to express on behalf of all of us here our deepest sympathy and compassion for the many family members and friends of Brian Thompson. Mr. Thompson's family and many of his friends were in court for the guilty plea today. I know they will have an opportunity to be heard at sentencing. We all stand in awe of their love for their family and for their friend, and their unwavering commitment to seeing justice done in this case. We hope they can take some solace in the fact that from the beginning, we have brought the full force of the federal government to bear in this case. In this prosecution, we have consistently pursued the maximum penalties under the law as necessary and just punishment for these crimes. The result achieved today now allows our office to seek the maximum penalty allowed, life imprisonment, which, as I've conveyed to Mr. Thompson's family, is what we intend to seek. I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Tisch.
Good afternoon. Thank you, U.S. Attorney McDonald, and thank you to the prosecutors and the federal law enforcement partners who have worked alongside the New York City Police Department throughout this case. Today, Luigi Mangione pleaded guilty in connection with the murder of Brian Thompson on a Midtown Manhattan sidewalk in December of 2024. This is an important moment of accountability, and my thoughts remain first and foremost with Mr. Thompson's family and everyone who knew and loved him. But I also want to take a few minutes today to recognize the extraordinary police work that brought us here. From the moment that Mr. Thompson was assassinated on the morning of December 4th, the NYPD mobilized an enormous investigative effort. Our detectives combed through thousands of hours of surveillance video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and worked through.
I mean, that literally, it's just, they make it seem as though this was a byproduct of good police work, but like, they literally couldn't catch him. He got away. It was a McDonald's employee in a different state. A McDonald's employee in a different state that was like, wait, isn't that the fucking guy, Luigi Mangione? That's it. That's literally it. So the idea that they and their diligent police work is what was responsible for capturing Luigi Mangione, I'm sorry. That's a little bit crazy.
An extraordinary volume of
it's kind of wild that
digital evidence.
It's also kind of wild that the person who snitched didn't even get the money.
They used some of the most sophisticated technology available to law enforcement, and they paired it with the kind of painstaking, old-fashioned detective work that has defined the New York City Police Department for generations, interviewing witnesses, canvassing neighborhoods, retracing the suspects' movements, and pursuing every viable lead. Most importantly, they developed a clear image of the man we were looking for and got that image out to the public and to law enforcement agencies across this country 5 days after the murder. That work paid off in Altoona, Pennsylvania, where an alert member of the public recognized Mangione and local police took him into custody. That was not simply a lucky break. It was the culmination of 5 days of relentless investigative work that gave the public the information it needed to recognize the suspect and gave our law enforcement partners what they needed to act. This case began with the worst kind of violence on our streets. It was answered by the very best of the New York City Police Department. To every member of the NYPD who played a role in this investigation, you should be enormously proud for bringing us to this day. And to those who idolize Luigi Mangione, I say this: violence is not a cause, murder is not a message, and a killer is certainly not a hero. Now I'd like to introduce the FBI's Assistant Director in Charge for the New York Field Office, Jim Barnacle.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good day. My name is James Barnacle. I'm the Assistant Director in Charge of the FBI New York Field Office. I want to begin by addressing the family, friends, and colleagues of Brian Thompson. We had the chance to sit down with the family.
SpongeBob ass name. I'm sorry. James Barnacle. Okay, Officer Barnacle. What's next? Oh, we got John Plankton coming up right after.
This morning, and they are still grieving, and they have been grieving for almost 2 years as Brian was taken away in the most heinous way possible. They lost a son, a brother, a husband, and a father, and a friend to many colleagues and other people. The family deserves closure, the clarity, and the assurance that every step taken throughout our investigation, the New York City Police Department's investigation, the Altoona Police Department's investigation, and the U.S. Attorney's Office prosecution reflected the gravity of the situation and the importance of Brian's life. While today's plea doesn't replace the void he left behind, I hope it offers a glimmer of the closure that the Thompson family and friends deserve. This tragedy shocked the nation and left a deep impact on everyone it touched. Violence driven by hostility toward opportunity and success stands in sharp contrast to the values true Americans hold dear. But rest assured, this FBI and our partners never stopped working to bring this killer to justice. While a plea was entered today, we know the crime has not been erased. Thank you to the FBI's Violent Crime Task Force, our largest partner on that task force, the New York City Police Department, the New York State Police Department. Thank you to the prosecutors and the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of...
I think the other reason why obviously this is such a high profile case is because of his status, right? And therefore they have to really stress over and over again, like, you know, this is, don't even fucking get any thoughts. Like, cause like, obviously when a poor person gets slaughtered in the streets, they don't close Manhattan, right? Like they don't do a 10-day search or anything like that. I mean, they're still incompetent all the same. Whether it's a poor person or a rich person that gets killed. But there's a reason why they were in a panic state after this. And they created like a CEO hotline. I don't know if you guys remember. But there's also a similar reason as to why the government came down pretty aggressively against like people who were even remotely sympathetic or came across as sympathetic to Luigi Mangione and like insurance denial calls. Like there was the case with that woman in Florida that straight up, I think, is going to prison. Like the point of this is to be like, don't even think about it, right? Like that's why they're so aggressively posturing here. I, for one, find it rather interesting, rather strange that, did they drop her charges? I thought that she was actually getting penalties. Yeah, they straight up created a crisis hotline for CEOs at the time. Kathy Hochul did. New York State officials considering creating a special hotline exclusively for CEOs to report perceived threats. I mean, I myself am, of course, a CEO, and I get death threats with regular frequency. I would like to report them, but they just seemingly don't care. It was a very, very interesting time because I think some of the companies very quickly stopped. Their approvals went up. Like their insurance claim approvals went up instantly after this. Once again, I'm not an advocate of the propaganda of the deed. Hasan, check out the replies under your X post from today. Which one? When someone says X post, I'm always a little disturbed by that. It's like when someone doesn't use Twitter and says X post, I'm like, that's strange.
New York, led by Jamie McDonald. Thank you.
Yeah, CEOs remove their photos from their websites online.
Thank the officers and detectives of the New York City Police Department, led by Commissioner Tisch, for your agency's unwavering pursuit of truth and accountability. Thank you, Commissioner. I'd also like to thank the Altoona Police Department of Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, who helped facilitate the extradition to New York. We're incredibly grateful to our partners, and we wish the Thompson family comfort and strength as the legal process continues. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Be sure to like